Hello everyone and welcome to another video. My name is Lizzie and today I have some Greek mythology inspired books to tell you all about. I love mythology retellings, classic story retellings. I love seeing how authors take an existing story and put their own spin on it and take it in different directions and get us to look at it in a whole new way. A lot of those books are specifically from Greek mythology. So today we're going to just be focusing on those books that are inspired by Greek mythology, and then I will probably do another video on non-Greek mythology retellings as well. So I've got 5 books plus a little bonus to talk to you about, and then some books from my TBR as well that are all inspired by Greek mythology. So the very first one was a recent read for me, and that is The Boy Lost in the Maze by Joseph Coelho. I loved this book. It's absolutely brilliant. The story is told in poetry and free verse, and we follow kind of 2 storylines. So the main sort of modern day storyline is the story of Theo, a teenage boy who is looking for his father, and he is set an English project, and he decides in that project to sort of re-evaluate the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, which is the other story that is told here. It's beautifully written, it has gorgeous illustrations, there's a little bit of a choose your own adventure element as well, so cannot recommend this highly enough. It's a great new release. Next up is a duology, and that is The Silence of the Girls and The Women of Troy by Pat Barker. So these books tell the story, I'm just going to wait for the siren to drive past the window. These books tell the story of the women in the Greek camps during the Trojan War. So the main character is Briseis, who was Achilles' slave, and it does not hold back. It takes a very brutal, honest look into what it would have been like to be an enslaved woman in a soldier's camp in that time period. And they are brilliantly written, very dark and haunting, and take a completely flipped perspective on these myths. I really liked the first one, but the first one very much just kind of follows the story of the Trojan War from someone else's perspective, and the second one I loved even more. It kind of goes beyond that and has a bit more of an original tale going into what life would have been like after that, after you're recovering from something like that. Really great books. Again, highly recommend. Now those are not the first sort of feminist twist books in this video, and they will not be the last. The next one I have to recommend is The Penalopead by Margaret Atwood, and this is only the second Margaret Atwood book I read. I'd read The Handmaid's Tale and had no idea what to expect going into this, and it was brilliant. It's a very short little book about the story of Penelope, Odysseus's wife, and the maidens who were killed by Odysseus's men at the end of the Odyssey. And it's one of the most impactful little books I've ever read. It was so good. The women are a literal Greek chorus kind of narrating the story. It's told retrospectively. Penelope is long dead when she is narrating this story, and it's as much about whose story is told as to the story itself. Brilliant little book. I don't think anyone will be surprised that this book is in this video. It is, of course, The Son of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I know this book is hyped and talked about so much. I feel slightly less bad about that because I was a very early adopter of The Song of Achilles. I read this, I don't know when I read it. I read this years and years ago, and while I am glad that it is getting the attention it deserves, sometimes it is a little bit overhyped. But what a beautiful book. This is again the story of the Iliad, this time from the perspective of Patroclus, who was Achilles' lover. It's a much more sympathetic perspective of Achilles than in The Silence of the Girls, as you would expect. And it's a romance, and it's an adventure and a war story and everything all mixed up into one. It is stunning. It very much broke me the first time and every subsequent time I've read it. It will forever be one of my favourite books of all time. and it has a very, very special place in my heart. Sticking with Madeline Miller, so about a year ago, and I think it's been published in the US as well now, then her short story Galatea was published as a single volume. Now, rather than in like the Song of Achilles and in Circe, where it's very much a new description of the myth that exists, this sort of takes the myth of Acis and Galatea and twists it into something new. And I'm showing you this. I don't actually have anymore the full book that it's from, but I wanted to mention the collection Exo Orpheus, which is 50 myths, and this is one of them. That's what it was written for originally. It is a brilliant collection, very dark, very twisted, of all different authors, taking different myths, some of them Greek mythology, some of them not, and rewriting them, reimagining them for that collection. So I really, really recommend that collection, or just this little individual story if you'd like to experience something a little bit more abstract, a little bit more different. As with all my recommendation videos, I'm going to finish off with some books on my TBR, but I wanted to give this poem a shout out. Now I only have, it's a Carol Ann Duffy poem. My copy of the individual collection it's from is at my parents' house, and I have the collected poems here. And it is Eurydice from the World's Wife collection. I love that poetry collection so much. Every poem is from the perspective of the wife or girlfriend or sister of a famous man. Usually they're Mrs. such and such. So there is a Mrs. Freud, I think Elvis's sister is one of them, Mrs. Midas. There's all sorts of characters who each have their own poems. Most of them are very witty, very sassy, very tongue-in-cheek, and the Eurydice poem is one of my absolute favourites. I will not read it out for copyright purposes, but I highly recommend checking it out. It gave me a good giggle, the Eurydice poem. I really, really liked it. And now onto the TBR. So first of all, these are actually 2 out of a series of 3, because I've read the first one, and that is Stephen Fry's Heroes and Troy. So I read his Mythos book, which kind of put all of the Greek myths into one place and went through them all. And this is Heroes, which does the same with Greek heroes. It's a kind of blend of fiction and non-fiction. It's the first one at least had the stories of the myths, but also a little bit of sort of context and a bit of kind of wider explanation. So it's a blend of fiction and non-fiction. And then there's also Troy. I have this in hardback because it was very pretty and very cheap and I liked it. So I bought this in hardback. Again, I'm pretty sure this is a more sort of fictional retelling. It's a fiction, it's not a kind of non-fiction telling of the myth, if that makes any sense, in that it's not saying Greeks thought this, it is telling the story of Troy. So yes, another Trojan War perspective. There's a lot of Trojan War in this video. It's mostly Trojan War. I'm not going to apologise for that. So yes, these 2 very much on the TBR. And I did say there would be plenty of feminist twists on Greek myths. And again, it's the Trojan War again. 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. From what I've heard, this is almost a collection of short stories. Each chapter, I think, is from the perspective of a different woman who was involved in the Trojan War. I've heard only good things, and I cannot wait to get to it. And also by Natalie Haynes, Pandora's Jar, which tells other Greek myths from the perspectives of the women in them. So again, cannot wait to get to this one. It's the one I've heard only good things about. Those are my Greek myth retellings. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me, and also we can get excited about the Percy Jackson series in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra for now.